Okay, hi everybody. So, thought I would just come in. I know I've been neglecting YouTube. It's out there. On Monday, I posted a video about inclusion, and it, did one of its little viral trends, and a lot of people were commenting on it just about how they don't get any inclusion at their school and how they had to pull their children out of school, or just like teachers just fighting with administrators, just all these stories. What I was seeing in a lot of these conversations was just not very inclusive language. And I kind of got put into this weird, I kind of got put into this weird situation of, do I correct these people who are fighting for the same goals that I'm fighting for, but in my opinion, making it harder to fight for them because the language they're using is very not inclusive? So, for example, someone was saying that that their child performs like a 3-year-old, and they're like, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something, and so like that language, which is something that I don't think a lot of people would think is very non-inclusive, but it is, because instead of focusing on what this child is able to do, you're focusing that this child acts like a 3-year-old. And I don't think that's very inclusive. I think instead being able to say, my child uses an AAC device to communicate, or they use picture icons to communicate, or they haven't learned to count yet, but we're working on like tracing numbers with our fingers. Whatever that the child is focusing on is what should be said. And if everybody did this all the time, people wouldn't be sitting there so focused on the negative. People wouldn't be so focused on what a child isn't able to do, because a lot of people can't do a lot of things. It just feels very negative. When you're focusing on what they can't do, you're putting a negative vibe out there. And if you just switched it and everybody switched their language to making it more positive and inclusive, then I think there would be more inclusion, because I think these biases are just so embedded in us and in our language. I mean, people that like agree with inclusion will then say like, oh yeah, my friend just had a Downs baby. and I just sit there like, no. Person first language. I mean, how about they just had a baby that was diagnosed with Down syndrome, and maybe just like focus on that they had a baby part, because like that alone is really hard. And then a lot of other teachers were just talking about how they were so excited to get their inclusive practices going, but when they say that, they say they just want their students in with the regular students or the normal students, which again is just not inclusive. Instead, you can say, I just want my students that are in my special education classroom to be out with their peers in the classrooms. That's where everybody should be. And focusing on, not saying special needs, or just not saying those words that put these kids in a box. When we focus on what people are able to do, we can focus on, how do we get them living independently? How do we get them getting a job? How do we prepare them for a job, for life, instead of focusing on, random things? What I'm saying is that language is really important, and you as an ally should be using positive, inclusive language all the time. Whenever you're focusing like on an IEP, or focusing on your friend's sister's cousin who just had a baby with a disability, or when you're trying to talk about someone with a disability but you don't know how to explain that they're nonverbal, again, focus on what they can do. So they might not communicate verbally. Do they communicate with picture icons? Do they communicate with an AAC device, with sign language, with facial expressions, with behaviors, body movements, eye movements? There are so many different ways to communicate. There are so many different ways to use language. And sometimes you just have to get creative. And this is how we stop this bias that people with disabilities aren't capable of being in our society as valuable members, because they are. And everybody should be able to treat people with kindness is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so I would love to hear your opinion. When people say things like this on Instagram and on Facebook or TikTok or whatever, like, how would you want to be told? Like, if you said something and it was not inclusive language, would you want to be corrected? How would you want to be corrected? Because I think that this is one of those barriers that is just stopping inclusion in their tracks. And that is just so important to focus on. So again, huge tangent. What I'm saying is language is so important. So how you can make a difference is that you use the right language. And that's focusing on what a person is able to do, not letting disability or whatever their disability is being a bad word. If someone's on the autism spectrum, if somebody is diagnosed with Down syndrome, that's fine. If somebody has a disability, that's fine. That's not a bad word. It's just part of their identity. Please let me know below what you think about this topic, because I am just so torn. Have a great day. I don't know when this is going to be up, so whatever day it is, have a great one, and check out the Recess Project. Bye. Inclusion starts with you, and I just want to help.